Why Singaporeans who read well are still rich? Singapore, a miracle of the world in the 20th century. From a poor town, through 3 decades with the decisive will of its leader, Mr. Kuan, Singapore became an Asian dragon. It is an economy with the highest GDP per capita in Southeast Asia, a prosperous society, and a clean environment. The whole world wants to imitate it, but there are many things that cannot be imitated. And there are also many things that people do not want to imitate. Because Singapore developed in a paradox that is not easy to explain, the biggest paradox is that it took off and then became a dragon, in a more or less authoritarian and dictatorial environment. The state intervened deeply in the lives, even the private lives of the people. The market economy was vibrant, but its invisible hand was controlled by the state. A religion that is uniquely Asian, yet very close to the West. Paying great attention to the social nature of development, yet successfully building a capitalist society. Singapore is an extremely rare mix. It has been described as both a dream of a developed country and a thinly veiled dictatorship. But how did Singapore thrive in such a paradox? Is dictatorship not necessarily a matter of the king wanting to die and the subject must die? As colonies around the world gained independence in the mid-20th century, many responded by firmly rejecting Western investment, seeing it as a continuation of imperial exploitation. In 1959, for example, Indonesia banned foreigners from doing business in its rural areas. They were forced to transfer ownership to Indonesian citizens. Singapore, on the other hand, is in a similar situation. Their country does not have many natural resources, especially no oil, to be endowed with democracy. The bad news is that they are dirt poor. The good news is that they have no invaders to fight. Surely the British are no saints? Ask the Indians. But they did not leave Singapore with the same unpleasant feeling as the other colonies. Statues have not been toppled, and English street names are still scattered across the island. Singapore knew that foreign investment was the only option. So they set out to design a country with no taxes, no protests, no corruption, and no leadership turnover. A country run like a corporation for corporations. Once the Pap was elected, they wasted no time in quickly eliminating any form of unrest in the party. Whether it was socialist opponents, labor unions, or student activists, it was hard to deny that with Lee Kuan Yew and the PAP, there was no room for opposition in Singapore. If someone is blacklisted, they are pushed into a corner and considered finished. David Nair, president of Singapore from 1981 to 1985, who resigned because of disagreements with Lee Kuan Yew, commented that Lee Kuan Yew's method was to sue opponents, put pressure on the courts and law firms, making it impossible for opponents to get out, and escape the procedures and costs of litigation until they went bankrupt or lost their reputation. There have been cases where after the court overturned a ruling in Lee Kuan Yew's favor, the government reversed and decided to appeal. During his tenure as prime minister from 1965 to 1990, Lee Kuan Yew imprisoned a former Parisian socialist MP for 22 years without trial. His tactics in eliminating his opponents were comparable to using a net of duct tape to attack a nose. For example, in early 1963, during an election, he used the British Internal Security Act to jail 100 key members of the Parisian Socialist Party, which had splintered from the PAP. But in its desire to please the big national corporations, Singapore also did what is now considered its greatest feat. Its world-class public education system was designed to produce highly skilled and disciplined workers by sorting children into accelerated, vocational, or ordinary programs. They did not even pretend to be equal. Singapore's healthcare system keeps its citizens and wealthy bankers happy and healthy, which in turn makes people more productive and brings more money into the country. Its enviable public housing system helps integrate the 3 main ethnic groups, Chinese, Malays, and Indians, by putting them next door. After all, riots in the heart of the country are bad for business. The secret to Singapore's clean numbers, punctual public transport, and obedient institutions is simple. When you have 6 decades of uninterrupted power, no accountability, and no opposition to get in your way, you can achieve anything you set out to do. The government affects every aspect, every activity, even every corner of the lives of the people of this country. In 1983, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew declared that intellectual women should have 3 to 4 children and called on men to marry intellectual women. This statement caused great controversy throughout society. Even educated women were offended and protested. Littering, smoking, or spitting in public were punishable by fines or even flogging, even for foreigners. In 1994, the flogging of American citizen Michael Fay drew the ire of President Clinton and many U.S. senators. A law enacted by Lee Kuan Yew required workers to save a quarter of their monthly salary. This amount could only be withdrawn when the worker turned 55. The government would use the money to serve the community. In Singapore, there are many laws, rules, and regulations that in other countries could be considered violations of human rights and civil rights. People jokingly say that in other countries what is not prohibited can be done. In Singapore, what is not prohibited must be done. As for what is forbidden, you only have to think about it when traveling abroad. However, when Singapore became a dragon, all the interventions of Lee Kuan Yew and the Singapore government became a guideline. Because it is undeniable that Singapore has now achieved an enviable economic growth. With a GDP per capita larger than Qatar, Switzerland, the United States, Norway, and Denmark, Singapore has become one of the richest, most prosperous, and happiest places to live on planet Earth. Yet the PAPE has maintained its ways. Elections still take place, free but not fair. In addition to the usual advantages incumbent leaders have, such as passing popular policies before elections and being able to call elections at the most convenient time, they also use various tools to disadvantage the opposition. First of all, preparations can only begin after an election is called. Even then, politicians cannot run in the true sense of the word, as the legal campaign period lasts no more than 11 days. Worse, the Prime Minister can arbitrarily draw constituency boundaries. For example, in 2020, some districts had just 19,000 voters, while others had nearly double that. The PAP also dissolved 3 districts that existed in the 2015 election. First of all, the Prime Minister can redraw the boundaries whenever he wants. That means the opposition doesn't even know which constituencies they're running in until the last minute. In 2001, the constituencies were announced exactly 1 day before the election. And 16 days later, the whole country went to the polls. If all that wasn't enough, they still have classic litigation. In short, the ruling party decides when, where, and how elections take place. They can jail or bankrupt anyone if they want. You might wonder why Singaporeans would accept this, but perhaps the better question is whether they would accept the PAP's iron fist when there are few alternatives. Another theory is that Singaporeans are making a probabilistic decision knowing exactly what they are getting into. One survey found that 64% of people consider economic development more important than democracy. If Singapore is truly the conglomerate that Lee Kuan Yew wanted it to be, it must pay its employees, that is, its citizens, competitive wages. Otherwise, it will lose them to its competitors. The relationship seems transactional. People want better schools, cheaper healthcare, etc. Meanwhile, the PAP seeks legitimacy, landslide electoral victories as proof of their control of the country. If the purpose of an election is simply to gauge support, then whether there is an opposition or not is irrelevant. Lee Kuan Yew's son, Lee Hsien Loong, who has been Prime Minister for 20 years and has just stepped down from the throne to Mr. Wong Chun-tai, is still sitting behind the scenes as a senior minister. Mr. Lee Hsien Loong has revealed his true views when criticizing opposition voters and freeloaders. So his view is that not voting for the PAP is like not going to work and still expecting to receive a comb. This was evident in 2015, when the government announced that it would give preference to PAP voters when it comes to public housing maintenance. It has finally abandoned the appearance of fairness. When Singapore is seen by the world as a prosperous, safe, and clean island nation with the presence of the most powerful multinational corporations in the world, it is often concluded that without a leader like Mr. Lee, Singapore would have taken a long time to achieve the achievements that the world is seeing and wanting to emulate. But perhaps Lee Kuan Yew and the PAP have once again proven the saying, "The end can justify the means, even if the means are questionable." What do you think? Leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos.